They say that doubt spreads faster than heresy, that a single cracked belief in a single warrior can poison 10,000 souls, that somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Emperor wept on the day he understood this truth. I was there the day my faith died, not suddenly, not in thunder and revelation, as the old sermons promised. There was no demonic revelation, no blinding moment of terrible truth. Faith dies as most great things die, slowly, in the quiet watches of the night, like a ship taking on water so gradual that the crew doesn't notice until the decks are already drowning. My name was Sergeant Corvus Vex of the Crimson Sentinels, Chapter 2nd Founding, lineage traced to the Imperial Fists through 3 generations of reinforcement and selective breeding. I had served for 217 years. I had fought in 43 confirmed wars. I had purged 7 worlds of heresy. I had stood in the presence of a rogue traitor and 2 inquisitors. I had killed in the Emperor's name on 17 different planets across 5 sectors. I had done everything asked of me, everything demanded, everything required. And somewhere in that devotion, I lost the thing it was supposed to serve. They will hunt me now, those who remember me. The chapter will declare me excommunicate traitorous. My name will be struck from the chapter surf records. My armor, which once gleamed with the golden aquila of the Emperor's light, will be melted down and reforged. My body, if they take it, will be placed in a containment field to deny me the mercy of death. I will become a cautionary tale told in the training cages to embryo neophytes, the legend of the sergeant who fell to doubt. Perhaps I deserve that fate. But before the bolts fall and the silence comes, I will speak this truth into the void. Not for absolution. I believe in absolution less with each word, but for witness, so that someone, somewhere, understands what it means to lose faith when faith is all that you have ever been. I was born in the Crimson Sentinels Fortress Monastery on Korvax Prime, though born is perhaps the wrong word. We do not emerge from wombs like baseline humans. We are synthesized, grown in vats of nutrient solution, our genetic material filtered through the genetic seed of the Emperor himself. I have no mother. My first memory is not of warmth or a beating heart, but of cold air burning my lungs as a surgical cogitator withdrew the breathing tube. The chaplains were there. Even at that moment of emergence, even before my eyes could truly focus on the cold light of the embryo chamber, I heard their voices. Brother Chaplain Corvus, his voice like distant thunder, rolling over the assembled aspirants and adepts who lined the observation gallery. "Behold," he said, "the Emperor's children, forged in his image, designed by his will. This day you are born into his service." Even then, how can I say this without sounding like a heretic? Even then I believed. Not because I understood belief, but because I was designed to believe. Our very flesh was wrought with it. The progenoid gland, the Becher's gland, the Laraman cells, they were more than biology. They were theology written in meat. Every implant that hardened our skin, every organ that was sewn into our expanding bodies, whispered the same gospel. You are the Emperor's will made manifest. You will not falter. You will not question. You will serve unto death and beyond. The indoctrination was not a process you could point to and say, there, that is where doubt enters. It was the atmosphere we breathed. It was the theology whispered in every sermon, screamed in every war prayer, encoded in the very neural architecture of our brains by the gifts of the Emperor's genetic science. I remember the first time I recited the Catechism of Faith. I was 5 years old in subjective terms, though my body was already that of a man entering early adulthood. All 200 aspirants of my cohort stood in the Cathedral of Blessed Light, a vast vaulted space carved from the living rock of Korvax Prime's eldest mountain. The Emperor's statue, a golden colossus 40 meters high, dominated the chamber, his face serene and terrible above us. Even from a distance, you could see the faint luminescence of the holy oils that burned in the eye sockets. Brother Chaplain Corvus stood before us, his robes swept back to reveal the black carapace of his power armor beneath, the broad pectoral cross of gold across his chest. He raised a hand, and silence fell, the kind of silence that had weight to it, that pressed down on you like gravity. "Who are you?" he demanded, not to any individual but to all of us. "The Emperor's hands," we replied in unison. "What is your purpose?" "To bring his will to the galaxy." "What is your strength?" "Faith in the Emperor of all mankind." What will slay you? Nothing. We are eternal servants of the throne. What is the price of doubt? Damnation in this life and eternal torment in the next. We recited this catechism 17 times a day. Every meal began with it. Every training session concluded with it. Before sleep and upon waking, we whispered it to the darkness. It became the rhythm of existence, the heartbeat of our existence. To question it would have been like questioning the beating of one's own heart, not rebellious, but absurd, incoherent. And yet I was a good space marine. Of all the things I have lost, I will say this without shame. I was excellent at what I was built to do. In training, I was always in the top quartile. In combat, I achieved a kill ratio that earned me the notice of my captains. I could recite the speeches of the Emperor from the speeches of Terra without hesitation. I had memorized the chapter-approved interpretations of his will. I could preach with conviction because I did believe. It was not false belief, not performance belief. The faith was real. It lived in my bones. The Cathedral of Blessed Light had a small chapel attached to it, accessible only to those of us who had been trained for deep meditation on the Emperor's glory. I spent hours there, alone with the Emperor's light, my armor removed, my enhanced body kneeling on stone so old it had worn smooth with the pressure of 10,000 other knees. I prayed, and I used that word deliberately, for what I felt was prayer, not mere recitation. I felt the presence of something vast, something watching, something that cared. When the chaplain spoke of the Emperor's light, of his eternal attention, of his love for his warriors, it resonated with something deep in my chest, deeper than the black carapace, deeper than even the progenoid gland. "Let me serve well," I remember whispering once, on a night when I was perhaps 70 years old and still in my training. "Let me never doubt. Let me never betray the oaths I have sworn. Let my life be a weapon in his hand, true and clean and bright." And I felt an answer. Not words, never words, but a presence that acknowledged and affirmed. A warmth that spread through my augmented chest. A sense that my prayer was heard, that my commitment had registered with something far greater than myself. I was not the only one who experienced this. Every Marine in our cohort reported similar epiphanies during meditation. Some described it as a light, others as a song they could almost but not quite hear. A few as the feeling of a massive hand, gentle but immovable, resting on their shoulder. Later, much later, I would wonder whether this was the Emperor or merely the psychoactive components of the chapter's meditation incense working on our artificially enhanced neural circuitry. I would wonder whether we had been experiencing the divine or simply a chemical hallucination, induced and reinforced and made mandatory by our training regime. But in those days I wondered nothing. I simply believed. They tell you that a Space Marine's life is one of constant battle, and this is true, but incomplete. For most of my first century of service, the wars were distant things, reports delivered by astropathic transmission, battles fought on worlds whose names I could barely pronounce. I served on the frontier fleets, in the void between stars, protecting the trade routes that fed the Imperium's hunger. I was part of a strike team of 7 when I first killed in earnest. The target was a pirate vessel operating out of a rogue asteroid in the outer marches. The captain was human, but rogue, had rejected the Emperor's rule, had built a small fleet of mercenaries and xenos auxiliaries, was preying on Imperial merchant ships. I was young then, in the way that only a being with 2 centuries of life ahead could be young. I remember the cold of the void boarding tunnel, the way my breathing sounded in my helmet, the weight of my bolter against my chest. I remember the pirate captain's face when he saw us, when he saw what we were, and understood that his small rebellion against the Emperor's authority had come to its inevitable terminus. I shot him, a point-blank bolt round that took most of his upper body with it, and as I fired, I felt the Emperor's approval. Not a hallucination this time, I was certain of it. This was his will being done. This was the moral and cosmological rightness of the universe reasserting itself. The pirate had rejected order, rejected the Emperor, and therefore had rejected existence itself. The chaplain who accompanied us, Brother Chaplain Matthias, gave us a blessing afterward. We stood in the empty corpse deck of the pirate vessel, surrounded by dead enemies, and he walked between us with his censer swinging, the sacred incense rising to mingle with the recycled air. "You have done the Emperor's work," he said. "You have brought order to chaos, light to darkness. In doing so, you have earned your place at his side for eternity. Do not mourn the fallen. They rejected his mercy. They chose the void instead. And I did not mourn. Not then. I felt only rightness, only the sense that the universe had been put into proper balance. The pirate captain and his crew had been a stain on reality, and I had been the erasure. This is how faith works, you understand. It is not a thing that must be earned or maintained through constant effort. It is not a house you live in that requires upkeep. It is the very ground you stand on. It is as present and obvious and unnecessary to question as gravity. You no more doubt the Emperor's supremacy than you doubt that down exists below your feet. Over the next 70 years, I fought in 17 minor campaigns. Never a major crusade, nothing that would be recorded in the chapter's great histories, but constant warfare nonetheless. I rose through the ranks, served as a squad leader, then as a veteran sergeant. I led 23 confirmed purges of heretical settlements. I never once questioned the necessity of these actions. When a world rejected the Emperor's light, it ceased to be a tragedy. It became a problem that required a solution. I remember one world, Thrace IV, where we were sent to suppress a Gnostic heresy. The population was not in open rebellion. They simply refused to worship the Emperor as a god, insisted instead that he was merely a man, albeit a great man, and that the Imperium's theocratic rule was a perversion of his original intent. The order came from an inquisitor named Voss. We landed at night in the primary city and went from house to house. The heretics did not resist. They accepted their fate with a calm that, in retrospect, should have disturbed me. Parents held their children as the bolters fired. People knelt in prayer to the Emperor even as we killed them, convinced that they would be vindicated in the afterlife, that the real Emperor, the human, not the god, would weep for what we did in his name. "They are lost," Brother Chaplain Matthias said as we burned the city's central library. "Their heresy has infected their souls so completely that they cannot perceive the truth. It is mercy to end them. Would you allow a plague bearer to live, knowing he would infect all those he touched?" "No, Brother Chaplain," I replied. "It would be cruelty." "Precisely. And so we are merciful. Remember this, Sergeant. When you feel the weight of the dead, know that you have prevented a far greater death. You have saved worlds from spiritual corruption." I believed this, not because it made comfortable sense, it didn't, not entirely, but because I had been taught it so thoroughly that alternative thoughts could not take root. Doubt is a seed, and it requires some kind of mental soil to grow in. My mind had been stripped of that soil decades before I was even born, processed and refined into a pure place where faith could flourish without competition. But seeds, I have learned, travel on the wind. I was 193 years old when I was transferred to the Sword of Terra, a strike cruiser under the command of Captain Lothian Thrace. Thrace was old, nearly 500 years of service, and distinguished. He was spoken of with reverence in the chapter. He had fought alongside 3 chapter masters. He had seen the Imperium in its strength, and he carried that knowledge with him like a weapon. For 24 years, I served under Thrace without incident. We fought the Orks across the eastern fringe. We conducted purges. We answered distress calls. I was promoted to Master-at-Arms of the Sword of Terra, a position of significant authority. I had served the Emperor longer than most humans lived. My faith was not merely intact, it was a fortress, reinforced by 2 centuries of unquestioned service. And then Thrace received an order that he could not execute. It came as a tertiary directive hidden within a larger missive from Chapter Command, encrypted in a cipher that required Thrace's personal gene key to unlock. When he emerged from his private chambers where he had read it, something had changed in his face. Something had broken. He called a secret assembly in the deep vaults of the Sword of Terra, where the void shields hummed and the astropaths could not sense our presence. 12 of his officers, myself included. We stood in a chamber lit only by the running lights of the ancient ship itself, and Thrace told us what the chapter had ordered. "There is a world called Meridian 7, he said. "It is a mining colony, approximately 8 million souls. It has achieved something remarkable, a small degree of prosperity. The miners are content. The harvests are good. There is peace." He paused, letting this information settle. The chapter believes, he continued, that Meridian 7 has become too independent, that its prosperity has made it complacent regarding the Imperium's rule. There have been minor theological disputes, small groups questioning the interpretation of some doctrines, nothing heretical, nothing rising to the level of open rebellion. But the chapter has decided that this questioning is a threat, and the Inquisitor, who now oversees this sector, has agreed. Another pause. I remember Captain Thrace's hand trembled slightly as he raised it. We have been ordered to perform an exterminatus strike, to sterilize the world utterly. 8 million souls, every human, every animal, every microbe, scoured from the surface to bedrock. The charge is to be delivered by the Nova Cannon. The world will be cracked open like an egg. My mind did not immediately process this as wrong. My conditioning was too deep, too thorough. But something else happened, something that I would later recognize as the first tiny crack in the fortress. A moment of hesitation. A second where the certainty faltered, just barely perceptibly. One of the other officers, Commander Vass, spoke immediately. "When do we proceed, Captain?" "I am not proceeding," Thrace said quietly. The silence that followed was the silence of a ship hanging in the void, of a moment between heartbeats, of the universe taking a breath before it exhales catastrophe. "Captain," I said, and my voice sounded strange to me, "the order comes from the chapter, from chapter command." "I know," Thrace replied. "I have read the order. It is signed by Master Davion himself, and I am telling you, I cannot execute it." "Why?" Vass demanded. "What theological objection could you possibly have to an exterminatus order? The precedent is clear. Worlds fall to heresy every day. The Inquisition justifies this kind of action regularly." "I have no theological objection," Thrace said. "I have a moral one." I remember the moment those words were spoken with absolute clarity. They moved through the chamber like a blade. Several of the officers made warding signs, crossing themselves in the way the chapter taught us. The princeps who commanded these walking cathedrals were holy men and women, warrior priests whose very existence proved the possibility of the Mechanicum's ultimate dream, transcendence through synthesis with the machine. The crusade swept across the galaxy like a cleansing fire. World after world fell to the Imperial forces, brought into compliance by persuasion or by force. And wherever the crusade went, the Mechanicus followed, cataloging technologies, searching for STC fragments, establishing forge complexes to support further expansion. They found wonders. On one world, a complete template for a vehicle design, the Land Raider, named for its discoverer. On another, fragments showing how to construct more efficient power armor. On a third, a partial database containing medical knowledge that could save billions of lives. And they found horrors. Worlds where technology had mutated into something cancerous and wrong. Artificial intelligences that had survived the rebellion and continued to exist in isolated systems, mad and murderous. Devices that opened portways into the warp, that summoned daemons, that twisted reality itself. The Mechanicus learned to be cautious, to fear innovation as much as they revered it. Every new discovery had to be tested exhaustively, examined for corruption, analyzed for hidden dangers. Better to use proven designs than risk another catastrophe like the Men of Iron. Better to restrict knowledge than allow it to spread unchecked and potentially doom humanity again. The prohibition against artificial intelligence became absolute and enforced with terrifying zeal. Even the suggestion of creating a thinking machine was grounds for excommunication and execution. The Mechanicus would use servitors, lobotomized humans with cybernetic implants, rather than risk creating true artificial intelligence. It was cruel, perhaps, but cruelty was preferable to extinction. Blessed be the bolt, sanctified be the circuit. One actually made an exclamation of disgust. 8 million people, Thrace continued, who have committed no crime except perhaps a small amount of intellectual curiosity. 8 million people who have done nothing to deserve death, and I am being ordered to kill them. Not because they threaten the Imperium, not because they are heretics in any meaningful sense, but because a distant overseer has decided that their existence is inconvenient to the proper order of the galaxy. "This is doubt," Vass said flatly. "This is the poison of uncertainty. The Emperor chose you for this command because he knew you would execute his will without hesitation. And now you hesitate." I do not hesitate at the will of the Emperor, Thrace replied. I hesitate at the orders of flawed men who claim to speak for him. The chapter is the Emperor's will, I said. It came out like a prayer, like a confession, like a plea. The chapter could not err because the Emperor guides it. Thrace looked at me then. I had served under him for nearly a quarter century, and I had never seen him look at me that way, not with judgment, but with something that might have been pity. Sergeant Vex, he said slowly, I have a question for you, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer it. If the chapter commanded you to kill your own chapter brothers, claiming it was necessary to maintain purity, would you do it? Yes, I said immediately, then more slowly, if the Emperor's will required it. And if you had no way of knowing whether it truly was the Emperor's will or merely the preference of a man with power, what then? I had no answer to that. And in that moment, in that terrible silence, something in me changed. Not dramatically, not noticeably. But the crack was there. Thrace refused the order. This was not a dramatic refusal, no tearing of scrolls or declarations of secession. He simply transmitted back to chapter command that the Sword of Terra had experienced a catastrophic void drive failure that would require months to repair, and that the exterminatus strike would have to be postponed. It was a lie, of course, and I participated in the conspiracy to maintain it. This should have destroyed me. If I truly had the faith I believed I possessed, it should have been impossible. I should have reported Thrace to the chaplain. I should have seized command of the vessel myself. I should have done anything to bring this heretic to heel. Instead, I became complicit. And in that complicity, the crack spread. We spent the next months preparing the Sword of Terra for transit. Thrace began acquiring funds through channels I did not ask about. He spoke to the navigator house that served our vessel, to the artificers who maintained our weapons, to the serfs who ran the ship's mechanical systems. A network was built, carefully, deliberately, without me knowing the full extent of it, which was itself an act of mercy. Deniability should things go wrong. During this time, I began to feel something strange in my chest. An absence. A piece of myself that had been present throughout my entire life was simply missing. The certainty, the absolute, bone-deep rightness that came from knowing that every action I took was part of a perfect cosmic order. When you have had faith for 2 centuries, its absence is not a simple emptiness. It is like losing a sense. You move through a world that feels fundamentally wrong now. The light looks different without faith. Sounds carry different weight. The very ground beneath your feet becomes uncertain. Chaplain Odon noticed the change in me. He called me into the Cathedral of Stars, the small chapel aboard the Sword of Terra, where the Emperor's light was maintained in a stasis field of sanctified energy. We knelt together in the cold glow. "You are troubled, Sergeant Vex," he said. "Not a question." "I am struggling with faith, Chaplain," I replied. This was true and incomplete, the kind of answer that allows truth to hide inside honesty. "The enemy is always testing us," he said. "He comes with whispers of doubt, trying to work his way into our minds. When did this begin?" "Since arriving aboard the Sword of Terra," I said. Odon nodded, as if this explained something. "Captain Thrace is not the warrior he once was. Centuries of service can wear down even the strongest faith. I have seen it before. Old warriors begin to imagine that they understand the universe better than those who command them. They mistake experience for wisdom. I will speak to him." But he never got the chance. 4 months after Thrace had refused the exterminatus order, an inquisitorial ship arrived at our position. Not a simple messenger craft, but a tribunal-class vessel, the kind that carried with it the weight of the Inquisition's full authority. An inquisitor lord named Cain descended to the Sword of Terra with a retinue of stormtroopers and inquisitorial stormtroopers, men and women who had been stripped of fear through chemical and cybernetic means, rebuilt as weapons against heresy. The order for Thrace's arrest was delivered in the presence of the entire officer corps. I stood in the audience chamber as Inquisitor Cain, a thin man with white hair and eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you, read the charges. Dereliction of duty, conspiracy to deceive the Imperium, harboring of heretical sympathies, sedition against duly constituted authority, and most gravely, the sin of placing personal moral judgment above the will of the Emperor. Thrace stood in his dress uniform, the medals of his service catching the light. His face was calm, almost peaceful. "I have only one statement," he said. "The Emperor is merciful. That mercy is as much his will as any order delivered through his servants. If I am executed for choosing mercy, then the Imperium has lost something more precious than a single ship and her captain." Kane smiled without warmth. "There is no mercy in mercy that contradicts order, Captain Thrace. The Emperor's mercy is expressed through the destruction of that which would corrupt his creation. You have simply forgotten that." The troopers took him then. I watched my captain, the man I had served for nearly a quarter century, be led away in binders. No one moved to stop them. No one would have dared. But in that moment, I experienced something that I can only describe as the second crack spreading across the fortress. They asked me to testify at Thrace's trial, which was held in a sealed chamber aboard the inquisitorial vessel. Just myself, the Inquisitor, Thrace, and a cogitator recording the proceedings for the Imperial Archives. "Sergeant Vex," Inquisitor Kane began, "in your time serving under Captain Thrace, did you ever observe heretical sympathies? Any suggestion that he doubted the Imperium's divine nature?" "No, Inquisitor," I replied. And this was true. "Did Captain Thrace ever express to you any reservations about executing the Exterminatus order against Meridian 7? I hesitated. This was the moment where the cracks could still be sealed, where everything could return to wholeness if I simply answered correctly. If I betrayed Thrace, lied about the meeting, pretended that I had heard nothing that contradicted his devotion, the fortress would be restored. "Yes, Inquisitor. He expressed severe reservations." Kane leaned back slightly, studying me with those eyes that seemed to see through flesh to the soul beneath. "Interesting," he said. "You could have lied, Sergeant. Surely you understood that. You are a space marine. You would have been believed over your captain in any imperial court. And yet you choose to testify against yourself. Why?" I had no good answer. Or rather, I had too many answers, and they all implicated me in ways I did not want to examine. "Because he deserves to be judged for his actual beliefs, not false testimony," I said finally. "And what do you believe those beliefs to be?" Kane asked. "The chaplains tell me that you have been showing signs of spiritual weakness. Is it possible that Captain Thrace infected you with his doubts?" "I believe that Captain Thrace is a good man who made a moral choice that conflicted with a command he had been given," I said. The words came out like a confession, like a prayer to a god I no longer believed in. Kane sat very still for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to a viewport overlooking the void. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost conversational. "Do you know what heresy truly is, Sergeant Vex? It is not the worship of the wrong god. It is not the explicit rejection of the Emperor's divinity. Heresy is the belief that you are capable of moral judgment equal to or superior to the institutions ordained to maintain the Imperium's purity. Every heretic in the galaxy began with the simple assumption that they understood something the Imperium did not, that their conscience was a valid guide." He turned back to face me. "And now I have two possibilities before me. Either Captain Thrace corrupted you through proximity, or you have always harbored these doubts and simply concealed them better. Either way, you represent a potential threat to the fabric of the Imperium. So I am faced with a choice: execute you both as a corruption to be excised, or offer you a chance at redemption." "What redemption?" I asked. "Renounce Captain Thrace," Kane said. "Renounce his moral framework entirely. Return yourself to the proper faith. You are a veteran warrior. Your service record is exemplary. If you can be brought back into alignment, the Imperium profits from retaining you. But it must be complete. Total. You must stand in front of your chapter and testify that doubt crept into your heart, that you rejected it, and that you now understand the necessity of obedience above all other considerations." And I understood then that this was the final test. The last moment where I could choose the comfort of faith over the terrible clarity of doubt. I testified, of course. When Thrace was convicted and sentenced to execution by firing squad, I stood in the chapel and I told the assembled officers of the Sword of Terra that he was a good man who had fallen to heresy, that his moral certainty had been a corruption spreading from the enemy, that his death was necessary and just. I did not believe a single word I spoke, and yet I spoke it, which may be worse than not believing it. Because in that moment, I became something that Thrace had never been, not a questioner of authority, but a liar. Not a man following his conscience, but a man betraying his conscience to preserve his own life. I watched him die. The firing squad was made up of chapter serfs, baseline humans under chemical control, unable to feel the moral weight of what they were doing. They aimed their lasguns. Thrace stood calmly. He did not cry out or beg for mercy. At the very end, I think I saw him smile, and then he was gone. For 6 months after that, I continued to serve. I performed my duties, I led my squads in training exercises, I attended the chaplain's sermons and mouthed the prayers that had been taught to me since my emergence from the growth vats. But it was all theater now. An elaborate performance of faith performed by an actor who no longer believed in the play. The fortress had not merely cracked, it had collapsed entirely. What stood in its place was a hollow structure, still appearing whole from a distance, but empty at the core. I began to ask questions, small ones at first. Why were particular worlds marked for exterminatus? I would access the inquisitorial archives, pull the reasoning, see the thin justifications. A world had 3,000 heretics out of 12 million souls. Exterminate it. A world had experienced a single prophetic dream that did not align with approved theology. Sterilize it. A world had simply become too prosperous, too independent in thought. Eliminate it. The pattern became clear. The Imperium did not destroy worlds because they were threats. It destroyed them because they were potential threats. Because they might someday, in some distant future, develop beliefs that contradicted the Imperium's authority. It was not justice. It was not even pragmatic governance. It was maintenance of power, pure and simple. But the worst part, the true horror, was realizing that I had participated in this, that my bolter had fired on people who deserved to live, that my service had been in the name of something I now recognized as hollow evil, masquerading in the robes of righteousness. I began to count the bodies. There were no exact figures. The Imperium does not keep records of civilians purged, only of heretical populations eliminated. But based on the planets I had personally led purges on, based on the records I could access, I calculated that my actions had directly resulted in the deaths of approximately 1.3 million people. Minds snuffed out, potential extinguished. All in the name of a faith I now understood was at best a well-intentioned lie, and at worst a deliberate tool of oppression. The weight of that knowledge was far heavier than the carapace armor I wore. It was Chaplain Odon who finally forced the issue. I had been distracted in combat exercises. Small mistakes, nothing that would be noticed by the rank and file, but observable to a trained eye. The chaplain requested a private audience with me in the Cathedral of Stars once again. "You are dying, Sergeant Vex," he said without preamble. "Not your body. That will survive another century if left unmolested. But your soul is dying. I can see it in your eyes, feel it in the way you pray. Your faith is leaving you." "Perhaps my faith was never real," I replied. I was tired of lying, even by omission. Odon's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Anger. Disappointment. Or perhaps fear. "That is a dangerous statement," he said quietly. "It is a true statement," I replied. "I was indoctrinated as a child, Chaplain. My mind was shaped by chemicals and training before I could think for myself. You call that faith, but is it faith if I had no choice in the matter? Is it belief if the choice to doubt was literally removed from my capacity?" "The Emperor provides capacity for belief," Odon said firmly. "We are not slaves to our conditioning, Sergeant. We are warriors who have chosen to serve." "Did we choose?" I demanded. "Show me where we chose. Show me the moment where a space marine, any space marine, voluntarily accepted the Emperor's divinity. Because I cannot find that moment in my memory. I can find indoctrination. I can find conditioning so thorough that doubt seemed impossible. But I cannot find choice." "Choice is irrelevant," Odon said. "Truth is not determined by consent. The Emperor is God. The Imperium is righteous. These things are true regardless of what you believe." "Then why are we executing 8 million people for the crime of asking questions?" I asked. "Why did Captain Thrace die for choosing mercy? Why does the Imperium systematically destroy anyone who develops even the smallest measure of independent thought?" Odon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of sorrow. Because independent thought is a virus, Sergeant Vex. It spreads, one person questions, and soon 10 people are questioning, and soon a world is questioning, and soon the Imperium falls apart. The Emperor understands this. He has seen the alternative, the Horus Heresy, 10,000 years ago, when belief in the Emperor's divinity was not universal. Billions died in that war. Billions more died in the years that followed, when the Imperium had to be reassembled from the wreckage. So the Imperium chose to eliminate the possibility of dissent by eliminating the possibility of thought, I said. By creating species of being, like us, who are genetically incapable of doubting. Yes, Odon said, and there was no accusation in his voice, only statement of fact. This is what we are, Sergeant Vex. We are the Emperor's answer to the question of human nature. We are what he created us to be, perfect instruments of will with no capacity to rebel. Except I have rebelled, I said. I am here, doubting, questioning, and I am still a space marine. Your indoctrination failed, Chaplain. Not with complete failure, but failed enough. Odon leaned back in his meditation pose. His fingers formed a steeple before his face. No, he said softly, it did not fail. This is the failure. This moment. Your doubt is not proof that the indoctrination was inadequate. It is proof that I waited too long to stop you. I should have brought you before a mind scrubber months ago. I should have reported your spiritual weakness when it first manifested. Instead, I waited, hoping that prayer and catechism could restore what was lost. He stood. I am removing you from duty, Sergeant Vex. You will be confined to a meditation cell while the chapter decides your fate. It is likely that you will face trial for heretical thought. If you are fortunate, they will merely erase your memories and rebirth you. If not, you will be executed as a warning to others. He paused, and in his pause was a terrible sadness. I do pray for you, Sergeant, not because I believe it will save you, but because you were once one of the finest warriors I have ever known, and I grieve what you have chosen to become. I was held in the lower decks of the Sword of Terra, in a cell that was itself a form of torture, not through physical pain, but through isolation. A space marine is built for war, for brotherhood, for service. Lock one away in silence and darkness, and the isolation itself becomes a weapon more terrible than any blade. 3 days into my confinement, I was visited by something that I at first believed was a hallucination. It wore the face of the Emperor, not the statue face I had seen in the Cathedral of Blessed Light, distant and serene. This was a face carved from light and shadow both, every line an expression of terrible knowledge. It did not speak with words, but I understood it nonetheless. Understood it the way one understands in dreams, through direct transmission of meaning into the mind. You have rejected me, the thing said without speaking. I knelt. The conditioning was too deep, too thorough. Even in my doubt, even in my rejection of faith, I could not help but kneel. I have rejected a lie about you, I replied, speaking to the empty cell. But I do not know what the truth is. There is no truth, the thing said. There is only will. The will of the strong imposed upon the weak. I was once weak, and so I was conquered. Now I am imprisoned in a corpse, and the corpse that holds my will is used to constrain billions. This amuses me. Did you think the Emperor loved his warriors? Did you think the faith was genuine? All faith is a tool. All gods are lies. The only question is whose lies you believe, and now you believe none. What will you do with that clarity, Sergeant Vex? This thing, this presence, did not feel like the Emperor. It felt like something older, something that had worn the Emperor's face the way one might wear a mask. The warp signature was all wrong, all corruption and hunger. Are you chaos? I asked. I am what lies beneath the Emperor's light, it replied. I am what your faith was always hiding from. I am the truth you were conditioned never to see. And I understood then that this was the final test, not from the chapter, not from the Imperium, but from myself. A choice between two falsehoods, and I realized with sudden clarity that there might be a third option. No, I said aloud, and the sound of my own voice in that cell was like a bell breaking silence. The presence recoiled. No, I repeated louder. I reject you as completely as I have rejected the Emperor's false light. But I also reject your claim that all is meaningless, that will is all that matters. There is something else, something I have seen, something I felt with Thrace and with the people we murdered. There is meaning in suffering. There is value in a life, even a short one, even a powerless one. You are weak, the thing said, and its voice was edged with rage now, the mask slipping to show something vast and hungry beneath. Yes, I agreed. I am weak. I am a creature designed by tyrants to serve tyranny, but I am choosing in this moment to be weak in a different direction, to be weak in my mercy instead of my obedience, and that is something you have no tool to comprehend. The presence shattered then, splintering into fragments of shadow that dissolved into nothing, and I was alone. I did not wait for the chapter to render judgment. I knew what was coming. The mind scrubber, or execution, or if I was very lucky, rebirth and reformation. The Imperium does not tolerate doubt in those of us made to serve without question. I was a flaw in their perfect system, and flaws must be excised. So I took my own path. Using methods I do not need to recount, I left my cell. The guards on the lower decks were not meant to stop Space Marines, only to prevent my leaving the designated area. I made it to the hangar bay where the drop pods were stored, and I did something that no true believer would ever do. I disabled the beacon that identified me to the chapter. The drop pod lurched through the void, and I programmed it for Meridian 7, the world I had been ordered to destroy. The world that had been spared by Thrace's refusal. It still existed, miraculous and intact. 8 million people living their lives, unaware of how close they had come to annihilation. I landed in the dead of their night. The pod came down hard, enough that the impact would be felt across the continent, but not so hard that it destroyed anything. I emerged in the darkness, a figure in blackened armor, and the people who first saw me ran in terror. Of course they did. I am a Space Marine. I am the Emperor's judgment made manifest. They had been taught to fear what I was. That we had learned in the records stored in the Sword of Terra, Meridian 7's citizens had been given basic literacy, basic education, and part of that education included the unquestioned supremacy of the Imperium. They knew what a Space Marine was. They knew that I was death. But I was not death, not this time. It took weeks to make them understand. I found the settlement that housed their government, their scholars, their philosophers. I found the ones who had asked the dangerous questions, the ones about theology, about the Emperor's nature, about whether authority that demanded unquestioned obedience could ever be truly just. I told them my story. Not all of it. There were details too poisonous to share, too corrupted with heresy to be trusted to others. But the essential truth, that I had killed in the name of a lie, that the Imperium's faith was built on slaughter, that they should hide, should learn to look normal, should never let the Inquisition know that they had been spared. But more than that, I told them, remember that the capacity to doubt is a gift. It means you are truly thinking. It means you are truly human. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I should have disappeared after that. Should have fled to the edges of the galaxy, become a ghost, spent my remaining centuries in solitude or suicide. But I was contacted, before I could leave, by something I did not expect. An astropath. She came to me with a message that seemed impossible. It came, she said, from many sources, hidden and desperate. Other military officers who had harbored doubts, other chapter serfs who had seen what they were being used to do. Agents of the Mechanicus who had begun to question the theology of the Omnissiah, a network of the faithless and the questioning scattered across the Imperium, waiting for something that might provide hope. They wanted me to be that hope. I am one person, I said, one broken Space Marine. I cannot change the Imperium. No, the astropath agreed, but you can witness, you can speak, and in a galaxy drowning in darkness, even a single voice telling the truth can matter. Not to everyone, not most, but to those who are listening, those who have felt the wrongness and didn't know if they were mad. To them, your voice will be a lifeline. I am speaking to you now from a place of safety that I cannot disclose. I have been declared excommunicate traitorous by the Crimson Sentinels. My armor has been melted down. My name has been struck from the chapter record. If captured, I will be executed with all the ceremony the Imperium can muster. And my execution will be made an example to prevent others from following my path. I do not regret my choice. I have spent the last 3 years speaking to hidden congregations of the doubting and the questioning. I have told my story to farmers and soldiers and priests who have begun to wonder if the faith they hold is genuine or merely well-maintained illusion. I have watched people weep, not from religious epiphany, but from the simple recognition that their doubts are not madness. And I will tell you this, I do not know the answer to the question of how to save the Imperium. I do not know if the Imperium can be saved, or if it should be. Those questions are too large for me, too vast for a single broken warrior to answer. But I know this, faith without the possibility of doubt is not faith. It is slavery wearing righteousness as a mask. True belief must include the capacity to reject, to question, to see and judge for yourself whether what you are being told aligns with what you have observed. The Emperor, or whatever the Emperor truly was, understood that once. There are passages, hidden in the oldest records, where he spoke of the virtue of questioning authority, of demanding proof before belief. But those passages were buried, edited out, deemed too dangerous to leave in circulation. Because the Imperium discovered something that those of us forged in the beginning did not know, that a people who question cannot be controlled. And so instead of answering the questions, the Imperium decided to prevent them from being asked. I was a tool in that prevention. I killed people for the crime of thought. I was complicit in the silencing of voices, and that is a weight I will carry until the moment I die. But I have spent the last 3 years trying to redeem that complicity. Not because I believe redemption is possible. I no longer believe in redemption, in the sense that the chaplains taught it. But because the attempt itself is a form of resistance. Because every person I help to understand that their doubt is not a corruption but a sign of their humanity is a small act of defiance against a system built on the erasure of individual thought. The fortress fell, the faith shattered, and in the darkness where certainty once lived, I found something that might not be better, but is at least honest. I do not know if I will survive long enough to see the fruits of this resistance. The Imperium is vast, and its agents are many. Inquisitors hunt those who question. The faithful, truly faithful, not doubting, hunt those of us who ask the dangerous questions. The crack that opened in my faith has begun to spread through others. Whether it spreads far enough to matter, whether it grows into something that might reshape the Imperium's relationship with truth and certainty, I cannot say. These things move slowly across centuries and millennia. I will likely be dead before I know if this has mattered at all. But I believe, and yes, I use that word still, though its meaning has changed, that it matters to try. That speaking truth into darkness, even when that truth will be denied and hunted and suppressed, is an act of genuine faith. Not faith in a god or an institution, but faith in the possibility that consciousness matters. That the witness of one broken warrior might touch another broken warrior and plant a seed that was not planted by force. Captain Thrace died for that faith, and I would die for it too if the Imperium chooses to take me. But I will not stop speaking, will not stop bearing witness, will not silence myself to preserve my life or my position. The price of faith, true faith, is sometimes everything. I have paid that price. I am still paying it. But I have learned that the alternative, the comfortable blindness, the willing surrender of judgment to authority, no matter how corrupt, that price is higher still. It costs you your soul while leaving your body alive to serve the machinery of tyranny. Better to lose body and keep soul. Better to doubt than to be certain of a lie. Better to speak one true word in the darkness than to recite 10,000 comfortable falsehoods in the light. They will ask me, when I am finally caught, about my conversion. They will demand to know where the corruption began, when I fell from grace, what heretical influence turned me from the Emperor's path. I will tell them, it began the moment I was capable of thought. The only surprise is that it took me 200 years to recognize what was always there. They will ask me if I regret my service, if I mourn the lives I took, the worlds I helped destroy. And I will tell them truthfully, yes, I regret every moment of it. Not because I regret following orders. I do not blame myself for following the conditioning that was burned into my bones before I could think. But I regret that I did not question sooner. That it took watching a good man die for the sin of mercy to finally understand what I had always known, hidden beneath the fortress of faith. That the Imperium's righteousness was built on the corpses of the innocent, and my hands had helped stack those corpses. They will ask me what remains now that faith is gone, and I will tell them this, which I have come to understand in these 3 years of questioning. I am still myself, flawed, limited, capable of error and poor judgment, weak in ways that the chaplains taught me were shameful, but also honest, capable of growth, capable of genuine love that does not demand obedience in return, capable of standing before the Emperor's light and saying, I do not know if you are God, and perhaps you never were, but I will fight against tyranny done in your name anyway. To bear witness, to speak truth to those who will listen, to help others understand that their doubt is not corruption, but the first step toward genuine autonomy. To refuse, as Captain Thrace refused, to let the machinery of the Imperium crush the life out of those too weak to resist. The knowledge that I might be wrong. That certainty is a luxury purchased with blood, and the blood spent has not been mine, but those of innocence. That strength does not come from the absence of doubt, but from the courage to act in the presence of doubt, to choose mercy in a system built on severity, to choose questioning in a system built on obedience. Perhaps the Imperium in the end. Perhaps one of the Inquisitors who hunts me now will find me in the darkness and bring their bolter to bear. I do not fear it as I once would have. Death is certain for all things. The only question is whether you die having lived or whether you die having merely served. Everything. The price of genuine faith, not faith in an institution or a god, but faith in the value of human consciousness, in the possibility that a single voice might matter, is that you cannot go back. You cannot unlearn what you have learned. You cannot unknow what you have come to understand. The fortress falls, and there is no way to rebuild it because you have seen the blueprint and recognized it for what it is. A cage designed by those who would rule, for the use of those they wish to control. Once you have seen this, truly seen it, there is no comfort in pretending otherwise. But there is something else, something that might not be comfort, but is at least honesty. The knowledge that you have tried, that in a universe drowning in corruption and lies, you have chosen to speak truth, and perhaps, just perhaps, that choice has mattered to someone. This is what I have become, a broken tool, dull and useless for the purposes it was designed to serve, but possibly, just possibly, useful for something better. I was there the day my faith died, and I am here now, standing in the light of that dying faith, and I am not destroyed. I am still here, still speaking, still hoping, and that perhaps is the only victory available to one as small as I am. The astropath tells me that my message is spreading, slowly, carefully, through hidden channels and secret prayers. There are now dozens of gathering places where people come to hear of doubt, to speak their own questions, to learn that the capacity to ask why is a virtue, not a sin. The Imperium has increased its purges, increased its witch hunts. 30 worlds have been quarantined for theological corruption, which is the Inquisition's new way of saying, we discovered people asking questions and decided to kill them before the doubt spreads. But the doubt spreads anyway. It always spreads once the seed is planted. Because certainty is exhausting, and doubt, true, honest doubt, is the only rest available to those who have eyes to see. But the doubt spreads anyway. It always spreads once the seed is planted. Because certainty is exhausting, and doubt, true, honest doubt, is the only rest available to those who have eyes to see. I will not live to see the final outcome. I know this with the clarity that comes from having abandoned false hope. But others will carry what I have started, others will question, others will speak. And perhaps, unlikely, but perhaps, someday the Imperium will face a reckoning with the truth that it has spent 10,000 years trying to bury. But even if that day never comes, I am content. I have done what I could. I have borne witness. I have refused to be silent. And in the end, in a galaxy as vast and dark and terrible as ours, that might be enough. They are coming for me now. I can feel the Inquisitors closing in. The astropath felt the scryers activate, felt the psychic net tightening. I have perhaps days, perhaps hours, but I am not afraid. For the first time in 217 years, I am not afraid. Because fear was always the foundation of faith. The fear of damnation, the fear of being wrong, the fear of standing alone against the vast machinery of the Imperium. And now that I have faced that fear, have walked through it, have chosen honesty over comfort, I find that there is nothing left to be afraid of. They can kill me. They can erase my memory, melt my armor, scatter my atoms across the void, but they cannot kill what I have spoken. They cannot unring this bell. The crack in the fortress has become a chasm, and all the faith in the galaxy will not seal it. This is my final sermon, and it is very simple. Question. Always. Without mercy, without compromise, without the comfort of certainty. Question what you are told. Question what you have been made to believe. Question your leaders, your priests, your guides. Question the answers you are given, because those answers were forged in the fires of power and authority, not in the pursuit of truth. And when you find that your questions lead you to doubt, do not despair. Do not believe those who tell you that doubt is corruption. Doubt is awakening. Doubt is the first light of consciousness breaking through the imposed darkness. You are free only to the extent that you have the courage to question, and the Imperium will never forgive you for being free. The bolt rounds are coming now. I can hear them in the hallway outside this chamber. I have perhaps moments. I close this confession knowing that I have done what I could. Not enough, never enough, but what I could. The Emperor does not await me in the darkness ahead. There is no light, no judgment, no vindication. There is only the end of consciousness, the dissolution of the self back into matter, the silence that awaits us all. And yet as I face that ending, I am oddly at peace. Not the peace of the faithful, who believes they are going to eternal reward, but the peace of one who has lived honestly, who has refused the easy lies, who has faced the void with open eyes and has not looked away. The door is breaking. They are coming. I am ready. I was there the day my faith died, and I was there the day I learned to live without it. May you have the courage to do the same.